Thanks very much. Warm welcome to everybody here and good afternoon. Or should I start by saying Aibowan, which is a traditional greeting. I come from Sri Lanka. The ICT for Peace Foundation was set up in 2004, coming out of the World Summit on Information Society. And it is pegged to paragraph 36, which is about this long as most UN texts go. But it's, in a sense, what it expresses is that as early as 2004, the foundation and the WSIS process identified ICTs as being critical to all phases of conflict prevention and conflict transformation, including peace building, and that ICTs would and could play a major role in bringing communities together that had been rent asunder by violent conflict. I am an activist back home, and as activists in this audience would immediately identify, when you wake up in the morning, particularly in a repressive regime with systemic violence, you are never fully sure of going back home alive or in the same condition that you woke up in. And so I am interested and have always been interested in ideas. And crisis mapping as an idea is an idea whose time has matured and whose time has come. So if you permit me to bring some big ideas thinking to the discussions that many of you who are experts in this field, I am but a novice and a student, will discuss over the course of this afternoon and also tomorrow and beyond virtually and into the future as well. We see several trends, and these are heartening trends, but intrinsic to them there are also systemic, processual, technological, technical, and other challenges. One trend is that information today is no longer a scarcity. We are no longer in an environment where there is a paucity of what we need to know. Rather, the challenge is to figure out and extrapolate meaning from the tsunami of information that we, in our daily lives, leave aside after a disaster, have to grapple with. And it is, I call, the aggregation of individual nodes, both in terms of remote sensing, but also the kind of information inputs we get from the field. The second, or the other big trend, is a trend that I think is from my part of the world, showing and demonstrating to the rest of the world what the future might look like. And that is obviously, I'm referring to the growth of mobile telephony, both in terms of mobile phones, but also mobile devices. We are, in our lifetimes, going to have a planet Earth where every single person is either going to have an addressable, unique, personally identifiable device, a mobile phone or something along those lines, or be in easily walking distance to one. And that has never in human history occurred before. And that is going to change both the world I'm most involved in, which is media and journalism, but it's also going to change the way we both prefigure disasters, but also respond to them afterwards, when everybody has a voice and can reach out to us directly with no third party and little or no censorship. And then, of course, the plethora of developments around this world of mobile telephony related to geotagging and apps development to augmented reality and what have you. The other big thing is that the networks are becoming the arbiters of truth and veracity. It's no longer just an individual who can report back, but platforms like Ushahidi's incredibly powerfully idea, Swift River, demonstrate the potential of using the network as a value larger than the sum of its parts, larger than any one voice. And we see the mushrooming of these networks. Crisis Mappers is one such network, but also networks of networks. Technologies to manage networks, technologies to infer meaning from the knowledge captured in these networks. And these networks have both people on the ground, but also people, for example, say at the United Nations in Rome, Geneva, or in the UN. Networks are the new big thing in both analysis, but also information generation. The other thing, if you've been reading Patrick Meyer's blog, and the pioneering, I think, work that he's been doing is, in a sense, the democratization of analysis. Earlier, it used to be repositories like the JRC with their supercomputing power and their access and ability to use supercomputing. Today, Patrick, through specific examples, but also others, have demonstrated that you can spread this globally to a crowd who can be your eyes, in some cases even ears, and can bear witness to what is happening on the ground thousands of miles away, but to make sense of that and help decision makers take decisions that help save lives. We are also moving into the Internet of Things. Many of you who have laptops open are tweeting and updating Facebook, but that is human interaction. We are moving into IP address-based refrigerators and light switches and cars and public transport and train stations and airports and airlines, and the intermingling, the coalescing, the network of the Internet of Things is its own intelligence that we have just begun to identify and might well in the near future even begin to leverage for the goals that we in this room are most assembled and anchored to, which is humanitarian aid. The Internet of Things is not just going to revolutionize the way we live and work, but also the way we address and design and deploy humanitarian aid, from RFID implants to wearable, digestible, insertable devices that help, from just-in-time networks from the field to the way we actually deliver aid. As Patrick in his opening comments said, another big thing that's happening, again, Ushahidi Rift River, but there are many others doing this, is sentiment analysis. When I came to Geneva on Thursday, I went to the Apple store just to play around with the iPhone 4S's Siri. Of course, I asked the obvious question, do you love me? And she gave this most incredible answer. It is actually amazing the way in which Siri taps into the web, Wolfram Alpha, and is able to wow you with the response in a mobile device. Arthur C. Clarke, a science fiction author who made Sri Lanka his home, said something that along the lines of any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And that is the dominant emotion I felt when I was interacting with Siri. But you don't need to go to Siri. You can use Google Fruit Trends, Swift River I've already mentioned, Wolfram Alpha. You can now farm the web for meaning, which is beyond what Google can offer us today, and might be the way we actually generate semantic analysis that helps, for example, with emotion mapping on the ground, that in turn can help us in our decisions to better deliver and prefigure conflict and aid. I have written a paper about 8 years ago on the topic of technology and peace building, and I titled it was actually my master's thesis, I called it a new cartography. And that's just not with regards to what crisis mapping and mappers most often do, which is the geographical plotting of incident data. But I think if you take a look at Microsoft's photosynth, for example, which is an amazing technology that is able to take photographs from a variety of devices and cameras and just match it together magically. Obama's inaugural address, just Google it, being one such example. So the many sourcing of bearing witness to use digital cameras in each of our pockets or palms of our hands through mobile devices, we are really going into not a new cartography just based on maps, but a new cartography of humanitarian aid and information as well. There are, may I add, some challenges, and if you permit me to briefly go over them. A Swiss newspaper just after the horrific, I think, murder of Gaddafi, however you see his regime, those images were very, very disturbing. Tagesanzeiger in German wrote this article, which of course using Google Translate was very interesting to read. And it said that the same technology that helped us, referring to of course Twitter, with understanding Haiti or the aftermath of Fukushima or even the amazing events often referred to collectively as the Arab Spring, was wholly incapable of giving us context to what was happening at the time when Gaddafi's news was just spreading around the web. There was really no understanding that we could get from these networks. It was full of rumor and indeed hate speech. I have abiding interest in right to information and believe that the people affected by disasters have an inalienable right to ascertain and hold us in this room accountable for the actions that we do and do not do. And today, technology affords them the ability to do so. I am concerned, however, that one of the ways that this wonderful field is evolving is that it is going into for want of a better term, a privatization of information, from public trust to private corporate ownership. And that has fundamental implications for the way we deal with information we get from people on the ground, to whom we are ultimately responsible towards. In terms of ownership, Patrick mentioned data licensing. These are really technical discussions on the one hand, but fundamental to the development of our field on the other. The other, of course, is the fact that so much of information is generated that few are thinking about the ability to store it for posterity. Today, you can't even access many of the tweets that were generated out of Haiti, for example. Of course, the Library of Congress is archiving some, but not all. And even in this room right now, as you are tweeting, few months down the line, you yourself will have problems getting back to those tweets. So we are, in a sense, as a humanity, both risking the loss of more information than ever before in a historical time, but also losing it on a daily basis. And that has implications for the manner in which crisis mapping deals with the information that is being generated today after any disaster, but also leading up to the analysis of, for example, say, conflict early warning. So to recap, I believe, and so does the Foundation, very strongly, that the so-called Web 2.0 or new media or social media or mobile telephony, whatever you want to call it, the devices that are from this podium glowing in the audience with Apple insignia, or the computers that are open, or the iPads and the mobile devices that you have, both these devices and the information that they can capture, not just in your hands, but in the hands of people on the ground, pre and post-disaster, is going to change the way we operate, the way we do business. It is better to engage rather than be critical and be outside, because this is a field that is going to evolve. You cannot any longer be an ostrich, put your head in the sand and wish it away. This is going to be the defining field of our lifetimes for humanitarian aid, certainly in the years to come. It is better to learn by doing and perhaps even failing, but not being fearful of sharing that failure, which I often find is something that doesn't occur to the extent that it should and could. And finally, beyond the razzmatazz of this wonderful forum and the expertise in this room, our abiding interest should be, as Delilah also underscored, to save lives. That is what we do. That is what must guide us, and not the telegenics and marketing of any one technology platform. That is what I, in Sri Lanka, go back home to and then rest easy on account of, not because of what I have done personally, but because of the ideas that are generated that can help communities help themselves. So on behalf of the Swiss government, Barbara Weeks, my colleague, Dag Nielsen, also from the Foundation, a wonderful activist and recent friend who's risking much to bring about greater democracy in his country, Egypt, Kamal Sedra, who's also from the Foundation, and also on behalf of the co-organizers, JRC, and all of the wonderful team behind this, ICCM, thanking the father and mother of ICCM, Patrick and Jen, for bringing these people together. I welcome you to ICCM 2011. Aibowan, as I started in Sinhalese, means may you have a long life. And in parting, that is also what I wish upon all of you, and in particular, the crisis mapping initiatives. Thank you very much.